Hello, my name is Francisco Garza, and I am doing my senior thesis on human trafficking. And the two disciplinary approaches I will be taking with this complex problem are human resources development and organizational leadership. Now, in abstract terms, human trafficking is basically taking one person from the country that they live in and relocate them to another country for the purpose of exploitation. Now, with this exploitation, it can be from forced labor, slavery, prostitution, and in very extreme cases, the removal of vital organs, which of course we all know, we know will end in the victim's death. Now, to kind of give you a quick snapshot of what the main issue is with human trafficking, we're going to talk about one well-known example, which is basically involving the young women from Eastern Europe or Russia. With this issue here, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, and it involves just taking young women who are living in poverty, and it basically promises them the transportation to the United States or to another country, and basically they harbor them. They hold them hostage pretty much. They do what they ask them to do: slavery, prostitution, the list goes on and on. And what they promise them is basically the promise of a new life. They're going to put them in a new country, put them in a new city, and rarely does this ever pan out for them. Now, that's just a quick example of what human trafficking is. Again, there's different kinds of human trafficking, but in all cases, it's all terrible. I was actually not even aware of the issue of human trafficking until recently. I recently relocated from Lubbock to Cyprus, and in just Googling just some things through Cyprus, human trafficking popped up, and I clicked on it, and I did not realize how big of a problem this was in the state of Texas, the area that I now live in, and also globally. It's a huge issue, and just for us to be so um, I don't want to say clueless, but just ignorant of it was beyond me because even some of the friends that I've spoken to since I've started taking on this project here did not realize it was such a huge thing here in the States. You hear human trafficking, you think of third world countries, you think of, where there's the laws are a little not too strict, or they just don't enforce them very much, and that's not the case. I mean, it's evident everywhere. Now, with using these two with using these two disciplinary approaches, I want to know from a corporation standpoint, what are we doing to help prevent this atrocity? From a corporation standpoint, what are corporations doing? Are they partnering up with the governments to prevent this from happening? We'll discuss this a little bit further into the presentation, but also too from a human resources development, or from a human resources development standpoint. But what are we doing with the victims that we have working in the corporations? I myself, I work for a huge corporation in the blood plasma industry, and if we were to have a victim that came into our business, what would we do for them? How would we be able to help them acclimate to working in the industry? Of course, with being in human trafficking and now being post-human trafficking, what resources are there? What kind of support are we giving these people? Because and in my research, I didn't really see a whole lot. You have people that are involved in drugs or may become alcoholics, and then there's a number of support groups out there for them, a number of resources that companies provide these victims to utilize to help them through the road to recovery. What about human trafficking victims? I mean, again, I think what the issue is here is that we're so blind to the issue, how big of the issue is, that we don't realize that there's a lot of help that they need. They've left a life that is terrible. They've gone through no telling what kind of bad things in their life, and now they're getting plugged into society, getting plugged into an environment where they're having to work, work socially, and there's nothing there for them. These people, they may be, have a lot of traumatic stress from a number of things, and there's really literally nothing there for them to help. So Again, in my research, I didn't come across a whole lot of resources that were there, other than just maybe some counseling that they could provide. But again, the resources for a human trafficking victim from a human resources standpoint was very, very limited. Now, when you want to flip it to the other side on what corporations are doing, well, one of the things that they need to do is really look at their human resources and what, development of programs they have to help the victims get plugged in back into society accordingly, and to continue that support as they continue to that longer recovery. Because again, a lot of these victims have had a lot of traumatic stress, so it's going to take a while. So that's one thing that corporations need to do, but also too, what are they doing to stop it? Tons of corporations in the United States do business globally, so we are involved as corporations, as the United States, as leaders. We're responsible to help end crime, and to provide a better life for a lot of people, even if that means living in another country. Now, when you look at this globally, there's 4 different views that I found in reviewing everything, and one approach, and again, when I talk about these approaches, it's going to kind of drift away just a little bit from the corporation standpoint, but it ties in there at the end, and I'll explain that a little bit more. When you're looking at it, there's a number of things. A lot of people believe that if you have a little bit stricter border control, migration policies, that will help end it. But a lot of other people also think that putting more of an emphasis, or making things a little bit stricter for people to to migrate over to the United States from, say, a third world country, that it will also help. So that there's a lot of debate there, but that's one of the ways that they feel that might be able to reduce the human trafficking. Another issue that they are talking about, which is where the corporations are tied in, is non-government offices. Basically, what are other people doing to help stop this? And again, one of the things that's been brought up in one of the articles that I read was, for a corporation, and we'll just say, for instance, we'll use a third world country and say there's a corporation there. One of the things that they've been talking about is the inequality of women. Again, it's hard for me to believe that that's evident elsewhere, but it still is. It's still evident in a number of places. And in a lot of these countries that are third world, the women are not seen as equals with the men. So as a result, they get paid wages that are less. So what winds up happening is that the low wages pushes the women who don't have enough money to get to the United States to live a better life. They'll get pushed literally by the corporations because they're not paying enough money to go into human trafficking, so they can work out a deal with these human traffickers to get them to the United States so they can earn a better life. So from a corporation standpoint in a third world country, one of the biggest things is to see the women as equals, and that's probably the biggest thing that I came across with human trafficking. Now, the third issue that I came across, give me 1 second here. The third issue had to do with the social and economic conditions, which, again, this is kind of tying back in to the Russian story that I just told you guys earlier. The social economic conditions that exist, again, pushes people into trafficking. Now, if we were to change that and change our mindset, we could literally end that right then and there. But that's a little bit easier said than done. And then of course the fourth approach to dealing with human trafficking is to attack the criminal organization directly. And basically what that's basically meaning is pulling key players that are involved in the organization of human trafficking out of it, and they'll see that the organization will collapse. But again, that's another issue that is just a lot easier said than done. So basically, with this whole research process that I've been doing, what I came to find out was that all 4 approaches all have their unique approaches to fixing the problem, but not one alone can do it. You'll have to tie all of them in together to try to solve this complex problem, and it's just going to be a lot harder than what it was, than what people anticipate. Where corporations and human resources can really definitely help is by being proactive. Again, we talked about the inequality of women in third world countries, but also too, from a human resource standpoint, providing the resources that is needed to these victims so they can adjust accordingly and adapt accordingly post human trafficking. Again, it's a terrible atrocity. It's a lot bigger than what people think, as we discussed, and it's definitely something that definitely needs to be looked at from multiple disciplines to solve. Just like with your drug issues and things of that nature, it's definitely a complex problem to solve at any level. But again, corporations and managers, one of the things that was really brought up that I really liked in my research that I failed to discuss, and I'll talk about that now, was, you know, bringing in new leaders and molding them to think globally and to think, what I mean by that is when the young leaders come in to these organizations to think globally and to think to make things better in society. So by looking at the issues that exist in society, human trafficking, drug issues, if corporations, the new young leaders of these corporations start to look at society as a whole instead of just their business, they can also help in this atrocity. So again, a number of things out there that are very beneficial to helping in human trafficking, but we're far from where we need to be, and it's definitely a huge epidemic that it's growing rapidly, and it's going to require a lot more approaches to fixing this. Thank you.